I started blowing glass in 1971, 70 or 71 at Mankato State. At that time, Mankato State College. I worked with the instructor. His name was Jim Tanner, and we were like, there weren't that many glass studios around, especially in institutions, you know, educational facilities. So I felt kind of, you know, I took it as like a lot of guys are going to tell you, as an elective course. Well, it gets into your blood, glass does. And so right along all these years I've blown glass, along with, and finally started fusing glass in the 80s. And fusing glass, making items like this I just started, but I've been making, I was making platters like this. Kind of since then. They were pretty monochromatic in the 80s because glass was not, you couldn't buy a manufactured flat glass that had expansion ratios that were the same as far as color and clarity and whatnot. And actually about 5 years ago now I found, through the help of a friend, that the float glass industry, that there were a couple manufacturers that were making float glass compatible colors. And I construct the glass platters in that mold with crushed glass. So you can see the crushed quality of this. And you can see on the back, actually it's very almost like crackle glass, but it's real fine. It's crushed glass. So it's packed into a mold kind of as a powder with a slurry, with a binder that's called CMC gum. And it actually burns off in the firing process, and it's just mildly sticky. So I use it in a couple different forms, a gel form, and also a more diluted form with distilled water. And I use it spray. I do a lot of spray on the work to get it to bind together. And then I have dry boxes that I use heaters to dry the work so it holds together while I'm assembling it. And eventually it goes in one of my 3 kilns, and it gets fired to, generally the platters are fired to 1530 degrees, and they take roughly from cold to being cold at the end. The whole firing process takes about 3 days. I build a platter, and I can't leave them sit around. They're fairly delicate when they're built, when they're finally constructed. And there's so much going on in the studio that if you bump that platter, you can spend your 8 hours worth of work and go down the toilet because none of it's any good. Yep, firing in electric kilns. This is actually a ceramic kiln, and that's what we started with because they didn't manufacture glass kilns back in the 80s. This kiln is only about, 13 inches deep or so. You really don't stack anything in here in a glass kiln. Generally that's one surface, one level firing, like I do in these, only it's a lot of wasted space. But here not so much. This is a test grid just to test different frit colors, how they react with each other. So I get a better handle on building a platter, on what's going to work and what isn't.